All right, I might be crazy here. Hey, trust me, I say that all the time to people, and they go, "Ken, you are crazy, but what do you got for us?"
All right, welcome to SEO Unveiled. Today I've got a really awesome guest, Ken Vitto. He is a senior SEO manager for a privately held company that has a ton of different brands. He's got both in-house and external SEO team members reporting to him. He's been doing SEO a long time, and like way before Google was even around. He knows all about Yahoo Directory, Alta Vista, Netscape. He even knew DMOZ when I was talking to him about that. So he's definitely got a wealth of experience that's going to help a lot of people today really understand a lot more about SEO. He's a self-taught SEO initially, which is what most people were, 20 years ago. And he learned from podcasts like Danny Sullivan, Rand Fishkin, and a lot more. And I think he's got a really awesome story to tell us today. Thanks, Ken.
Thanks for having me, Clay. Really appreciate it. And thanks for the great bio. Let me just say first that whatever I say is my own opinions. My company is awesome, by the way. I've been there 12 years, so I wouldn't say bad things about them. I just want to cover them legally in case I say something stupid.
I doubt that's going to happen, but of course, everybody's always looking to make sure that we're PC these days.
Yeah.
So one thing that's always a really insightful thing to get from people, especially at the beginning of an episode, is to really understand, where did you come from? Like, how did you ever get into SEO? Because I know you definitely back when you started, SEO wasn't really even probably called SEO. So how did you end up as an SEO focused person?
It's a really great story. Yeah, I appreciate you asking. So back in the .com days, they said, all you got to do is build a website and you make lots of money. So my dad had a struggling company, and I've always been into computer stuff. I had computer back, the old Commodore Amiga and all that stuff. I mean, way back. And I've had a dot matrix printer because there weren't many dot matrix, but I needed charts and graphs because I'm always data driven. Anyway,
lining up those ribbons was a real pain.
Yeah, so the color one does it for you. It actually moves it up and down. It was really cool, expensive. But anyway, I digress. So my dad was struggling with his company, and I said, "Dad, there's this thing called the internet." And by the way, my dad had never used a computer. I said, "There's a thing called the internet, and they say all you got to do is build a website and you'll make lots of money." I said, "I can do this for you. I'll learn it. I'll learn how to build one of these website things and make it for you. I'll do the photography and all that because I already was doing photography, blah, blah, blah." So I built this website for him. Nobody came to it. They forgot to tell you that not only do you have to build it, you got to drive traffic to it. I was
you
like,
got to
really?
actually market it, right?
Right. And I said, Dad, I promised you this website. For out of love for my dad, I'm going to learn how to drive traffic to this website. So that's how I became how I became what I am today. Love for my dad and trying to help his business. And so I learned, as you mentioned, from early podcasts. Danny and Rand and Bruce Clay and all those pioneers. And so I ended up learning how to do it, and the website became so successful. My dad never had to hire another salesperson.
That's fantastic.
It took off and did really well. Yeah, so that's the long version of it, and it was great, but. My own career, let me expand on this real quick, because this is where it gets even crazier. My own career was in sales, and I was doing the old dialing for dollars back in the days, and wasn't doing that well because people, dealing with people on phones, you get voicemail, they don't return your calls, and I go, why don't I use what I learned from my dad and make a website for my company?
Sure.
Talk to my bosses. They said, SEO what? Internet what? Like, they didn't understand. They didn't get it. So they ultimately said, no, I can't do it. So what I did is I paid for a domain myself, built my own website to generate my own leads in the sales department. So within a short time, I became the top salesperson. And that was kind of like surprising to people. And then eventually I sold more than all the salespeople combined. That made my boss actually think I was pulling something sneaky because they didn't understand the internet. They didn't understand SEO. Yes. They thought I was cheating, stealing leads or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah. So needless to say, I ended up leaving that company. But back then, I tried to find a job doing SEO, and most people didn't know what it was. It was terrible. There weren't jobs for SEO. I had to try to proactively sell my services to companies that I thought were good matches for me. And even then, it was tough.
Yeah.
I was way ahead of the curve.
Wow. That is a really interesting perspective. I love it that you like outsold everybody and then they didn't like, I would have been like, hey, he's our new head of sales.
Yeah.
You know, like promote this guy. He knows what he's doing. He's going to make this thing work. Like let's put more money into whatever he's doing on the technology side. And maybe we need less salespeople, more people like him.
Yeah. Well, it was one of those people fear what they don't understand.
Sure.
And they thought I was pulling some sort of black magic. So,
well, in fairness to them, you kind of were, right?
For them.
You built your own lead gen tool, and you were the only one getting the leads. But the funny thing is, like you wanted to do it, and you asked them if you could do it, and they're like, no. Yeah. So I kind of like the gutsy approach. You made your numbers, and you started killing it on the quota, and you probably got that company a lot more revenue than they ever expected. And you know, it's sometimes when you're kind of an explorer and a maven, it's hard to explain, right? It's hard to make that explanations to people that aren't used to it. SEO is filled with that. I feel like every day there's things changing. Everything's always on the cusp of something new or something different, and so it's always hard to make those judgment calls even today. So, I mean, you know, what right now are you noticing in SEO as far as trends in general that you're really excited about?
I think the most interesting trend is the communication back and forth between the SEO people and the search engine. I don't want to always say Google, but you know, I might slip and just say Google just because they're the most popular. But Google's the one that's doing the most communicated right now, right? They're openly wanting you to tell them more. And, you know, they tell a little more than they used to too, a little bit more, but you know, yeah. So I think that is the best trend. And I say that because it covers a wide area, right? Because that's what product schema is, right? That's well, a lot of schema, not just product schema, just I happen to do lots of products, but schema in general, right? They basically want you to tell them more. They aren't coming out and saying that they have limitations, but you know, they could only do so much. So the more you tell them, the better you tell them. It's a win-win.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how that's kind of come from, you know, back in the early 2000s, it was like on page before Google. And that was kind of how you tell the search engine what your page is about, by having content that matches the keywords that you want and stuffing it up with keywords, and then you kind of rise. Yeah. But now where you're talking about like actually creating schema that makes sense for Google to understand, then being able to utilize that for their rankings, then they can express that data to the user and make the experience for the user even better too, right? Like showing star ratings. I used to work at Edmunds, the car review site, and I remember we had our star ratings would show on Google because we had it in the schema. And I was like, that really is a great way for a user on Google to search, hey, you know, am I interested in a, you know, Toyota Tacoma? What do people think of it? Toyota Tacoma reviews, and you get a quick scenario, a quick synopsis of like a little bit of information, kind of a teaser, but it's enough for someone to be like, hey, well, I think that's going to be a good place for me to visit, a good place for me to start my journey. so that you get the user to have a little bit more of a peekaboo into how good that content is. And I think that's part of the communication there is to Google, but I think it's also straight back to the user. No?
Oh yeah, totally. So anytime I learn about something new, I try to take advantage of it, right? So schema, some advanced schema. I think I'm even doing some schema that Google doesn't even support yet. There's that kind of little clue yet, because you got to kind of read between the lines a little, right? This is part art and part science, the SEO world, right?
Yeah.
So I may be doing something for the future, but if it works out, I might be one of the first, right? Might be one of those pioneers. And doing microdata, right? As well. So schema and microdata, I think, are really important. They've been talking about it for a while, right? But
and what do you mean by microdata? Can you expand a little bit about what that is?
Laying out some data, in the code that's on the page, right? Kind of reinforcing it and providing maybe a better format for it. So let's say like a technical website, maybe specs or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. That you want the search engine, Google, to see more about, see more of, know that you think it's important. So if it agrees, obviously it has to agree, then it may take your suggestion. And there's the other thing that's going on now. In the old days, Google used to say, tell us how you want it, we'll do it. Now they say, tell us how you want it, we might do it, right? And then they even changed their mind. Hey, what you said on your description, we didn't like that. We went with this other one. So, and then here's something a lot of people don't think of, and I think of all the time. Google's a business. That they are technically in it for their best interest. They got to survive, right? Yeah. So that's part of, I'm probably giving too much away, but that's part of how I read between the lines, right? That's one thing I use. Like, what would I, basically I say, what would I do? Then it's, what would Google do, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So I see that more and more as being able to catch the little hints.
Interesting. Yeah. That's really unique to use a lot of different types of schema and the microdata to try to really make sure that whatever product pages or it sounds like a lot of it's product pages you have, people can easily find, right? So I feel like some of the stuff you work on is pretty technical. And so looking for things that meet certain technical specifications is probably pretty common in your realm. So that makes a lot of sense.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of people that are, need to have a technical website, right? Or need it to be more technical. So it's not like it's unique to our company. It's like, it's pretty broad. So
yeah. And I mean, I feel like, you've been able to stay ahead of the curve and for so long and so many iterations of Google's updates and other search engines changing. So how do you stay ahead of the curve on trends and what are you doing to figure out what's next in SEO?
Well, and here's another great thing about Google and their communication. Like John Mueller, I really like that guy. I mean, oh my goodness, he just says it like it is, and sometimes I'm shocked at what he says. But the thing I was going to get at is how John even says, hey, there's a new update coming up. There's really nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Your choice of website style or something like that would probably have to change dramatically to not get penalized or to take advantage of it. And it's kind of like, whoever has this kind of website will benefit, and don't get me wrong, anything major that we would get penalized for, I work to change, obviously. But I'm more about trying to catch it early to take advantage of it. And some of that comes from going to the advanced SEO conferences.
Mhm.
Yeah. So there's another
Are,
tip.
are there some that you recommend for people to go to?
Well, I don't want to make Danny upset. I haven't been to an SMX yet. And I'm not asking for tickets, Danny. Trust me, I might end up there. But because I'm on the West Coast, I've been going to PubCon because they hold that in Las Vegas, and that's an easy hub to get, low cost for the company, and blah, blah, blah. And there's so many advanced SEO people that go there. It's been so beneficial, really has. But I am looking to do more of that, more conferences, because what I pick up is so valuable to the company.
Sure, for sure. I mean, I feel like that's a good place to be able to kind of learn about, new things going on. And then, one things that I always wonder about is like when you're talking about like adding microdata or adding schema, and how are you able to get some of these initiatives, taken on by the tech team and added to this site? Like, how are you getting all these kinds of things prioritized? Any tips for maybe people that are having trouble getting things prioritized in their companies?
Wow. It's tough, especially something that advanced, right?
Yeah.
I would say the if you're lucky enough to have a competitor that's doing it, they tend to take that seriously. So there's my first advice is find a competitor that's doing it and being successful, show examples of it. That tends to get reactions quicker. But if you can't, that's really tough. You really have to explain what you expect. Of course, you just lay out the who, what, when, where, why, all that stuff. And then show, maybe make up a fake result, of what you've seen,
Sure.
what advantage it will have. And, don't make any bold claims because you never know, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's no guarantee that a search engine's going to take it, accept it, that you could do it in time. A lot of things I did was a lot of trial and error, right? Because they're so advanced so early on. Iterations of it until it works, So it's a blast, don't get me wrong, but it's a lot of hard work. And there's one of my famous sayings. If I ever say this at the company, they'll be like, oh, you always say that. But one of my sayings is, if it's that easy, everyone would do it.
Yeah.
So here's the tip. One of those tips to help, pass along some information, pass it forward, right? Pay it forward. I mean, do the hard stuff. Don't cut corners.
Yeah.
Because if it's hard, there's a good chance your competition's not doing it.
Sure.
So
I mean, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, if you put in the hard work. Yeah, go ahead.
And if you're having trouble prioritizing things and all they want to do is easy stuff, it's a good saying of, well, if all we do are kind of surface level deep things, then how are we going to be able to take a significant advantage versus our competitors, especially by taking a look at our competitors? I've been in companies where we've been burned by competitors because we didn't catch on quick enough and we didn't make changes fast enough. So I think those are real things. I think, thinking about that, even if you don't have a competitor that's doing exactly what you're doing, you could find someone in an alternative industry and show that and say, look, it's happening over here. It's just a matter of time before one of our competitors does it or we do it first. Do we want to be first or do we want to be second to last? Right. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of good things that you can get there, because a lot of people don't talk about competitors as much. And I feel like there's a lot there about competitors. Like, are there certain things that you're doing to track competitors, certain things that you're doing to like make sure like that you're being able to maintain rank while you are in a competitive industry? Like, what kind of things do you utilize?
All right. So here's a unpopular take on this. And
Sure.
but just telling you this from doing this forever is, you can watch your competition all you want. And if they outrank you, most people just try to do what they're doing. But if you just are a me too, odds say that you're behind the curve and the search engines are going to still like them more, right?
Yeah.
So I don't watch competition that close. Um, I, I, what I do look for is just those things they're doing that we're not, right? That I might, or something, or maybe I really study their website and I go, why are they doing that? Right? That sounds really odd or it's unusual. Well, that's usually a key that they're trying to do something different, right? Or they just don't know what they're doing. Hopefully you're looking at a good competitor and they know what they're doing, and you can learn. But I'd say it's more important to just do everything well. Here's another, like old wisdom thing, because I'm kind of old. There's no one silver bullet to SEO. Everyone's looking to go, so what's the one thing that you do that got you to where you are? There isn't one thing. If it was that easy, everyone would do it. Just like just like ranking factors, right? There's so many of them. You're not going to be able to do, you're not going to be able to do just one and rank. And I'm sure that's what Google said when they built this thing, right? Hey, we can't just let people beat the system by doing one thing really well and the rest bad, right? We got to make sure they do most things well and certain things excellent.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's a really good take on that, because I think the thing is, we look at changes every day here. And so I'm just well aware of like things changing and competition changing for our clients or certain keywords that we track on our system. And so the funny thing is, you can kind of easily see who's really making a lot of changes that are SEO relevant and who isn't, right? The stagnant sites versus the ones that aren't. And it's kind of interesting because you talk about who to follow and who not to follow, and not necessarily follow at all, but see what they're doing that you might not be doing. And I see, some people doing lots of changes, like lots of H1s and title changes, and then waiting and seeing if the rank changes, and then doing it a little bit differently. It's funny. I have this one search for, I think, like avocado facts or something that I use in a demo. And I see there's one site that changes, like their H1 is like avocado facts for kids. And then it became avocado facts for kids, parents and teachers. And then it became avocado facts for parents, teachers, and someone else, but no kids. And it kind of felt like the old days of keyword stuffing of like, well, who's your audience? Who are your avocado facts for? Are they for who you want them to be today, or are you doing something that's smart? And then you can track ranking changes. It's kind of interesting to see what other people are doing. And in my realm, I feel like it's just kind of interesting to see what people are doing, not necessarily helping me figure out what to do, but it's also just kind of saying, well, what are all the other SEOs trying to do, or what are the content managers doing that might be messing up SEO, right? So, because sometimes you don't know if it's the SEO managers that are doing it or the content people. So it's or vice versa, or someone else on the site, or a random developer. It's hard to know.
Yeah, and your example before we leave it is with the new helpful content update. That would, of course, mean if you're changing H1 tags all the time, you're trying to game the search engines. Not a good choice. Definitely not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Google will spot it quicker than ever now. Well, I've never been black hat, never even been gray hat, always white hat. So I'm never afraid of a penalty because I'm always, although I optimize things really well, I make sure that if anybody reads it, it doesn't sound stupid, it's grammatically correct, blah, 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 right? Most people scan websites anyways. They usually don't read them, especially we're in B2B. So B2B, you're looking for your business, not for, personal purchase. So do it for people and search engines. They say do it for people first. I'd say equal, do at least stay equal, if nothing else, right?
So, I mean, you bring up a great point, like the B2B, pages versus a site that's more consumer oriented. What do you think is a chief differentiator that makes, doing SEO for B2B a little bit different? Do people spend more time on their pages or less time? I don't know. Maybe they spend less time because it's not personal. I don't know.
You got to know your audience, obviously, right? That's always
Yeah.
that's been a big key to marketing in general, right? So luckily, we know our audience, and we know that they're at work, right? They're not doing this for fun at home, right?
Yeah.
So they become as efficient as possible at doing these things, right? Because it's their job at stake, right? So
Sure.
they may have a low bounce rate or may have a high bounce rate. Either one could be right, right? Because if you take them exactly to where they should be and they read it and they leave, that's a bounce. But they found out
Yep.
exactly what they needed to, right? So it's
Yeah.
how your website's built. We could talk a whole nother episode about this.
Well, I mean, what do you think is important in that? Just, maybe a couple quick tidbits about that.
Well, I'd say find people that do, surveys in general about what B2B websites should be, right? To make sure that you're doing it right. Kind of pick the average because everybody's different and different parts of a website. For example, your FAQ section, if you've got one, would be different than a product page, right?
Sure.
And a category page is something that you may need longer to look at. FAQs could be quick. If you've got any tools on your website, that could be a quick thing too. So you really have to take every type of page into consideration, to know if you're doing it right. Again, if it was that easy, everyone would do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. The funny thing is, when I first came to SEO Radar, I remember I looked at the traffic and how many people were coming from mobile versus desktop. Because there's been times in my life where I was been the mobile app PM, and so very very much in the realm of I've done everything. And so I saw that we got 90% desktop traffic, and I was like, "That's B2B SaaS."
Yes.
Like,
yes.
when you only have 10% of people using on your phone, it's just a few people that are just really interested with something that's going on really quickly. So I feel like there are some clues into who your audience is. Like you said, they're at work. They're like focused on productivity. I'm sure your desktop percentage is also kind of inverted from like the normal consumer ones like mine.
So you said it. It makes sense, right? It does.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like there's some clues you can look for to kind of help you understand.
Exactly.
So, I mean, for some, people right now always want to understand, like, what do they need to be doing? What are they doing right or wrong? And I kind of want to get your take on what should everyone in our space stop doing and start doing.
Well, let's put it. Let me start with one. I think agencies should stop trying to get business by sending over unwanted audits, especially if they're audits without someone actually spelling out what it means. There's one thing, because it's just bad for the SEO or the SEO team to have to keep explaining these things, right? Like, well, or even salespeople saying from an agency, "Oh, we could increase your organic traffic 50%," or whatever. Just generalizations. Sure. It really causes trouble. Now, I'm not saying the good agencies should stop doing it. In fact, they help people, right? So, but a good agency would actually do their homework and not send over a generalization without looking at it first, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just saying to those agencies or salespeople that think they could get business by scaring people, people are getting smarter than that, and all the time. But it's causing trouble. And, if you cause trouble for an SEO team, who knows what can happen here. All of a sudden, you could start ranking for things that your company never wanted to. Don't spook the SEO people.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah, they did that in the old days, right? They used to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I'm referring to. The old days they used to do that.
So kind of these like cold email, like, site audits. You've got some problem on your site. You've got a title tag that's too long. Oh no.
Exactly. One tag, right? That's the
Yeah.
thing. That's the other thing. Like they really need to understand what it means, instead of just doing one of the generic crawls, and then getting a report, you got let's say you got 50,000 pages on a website, and you got 3 pages that have this issue. They put it as high of a priority as something that has 10,000 issues, right? So really, they just, do their job, right? Do it right, help people out. Don't think you're going to scare them into work, because people are getting smarter. Yeah.
I get it. I get it.
So there's one. There's one.
It sounds like you get approached by a lot of SEO agencies.
I do. I try to stop them before they send something, just to avoid the headache. So there's one thing you should stop doing.
And then what do you think people in our space should start doing? Maybe more like tactical.
Yeah. I think what I alluded to earlier is trying to think like Google, right? Mm-hmm. Think about what is best for Google. I mean, the good thing is that these days it's a win-win scenario. In the old days, it used to be us against Google, but with the more open communication, they want us to be successful, because obviously, if we provide the best choice for the search, they'd love to put us up at number one, right?
Yep.
Hey, that's what they do. And along the way, if they happen to make some revenue off of PPC, that's great, right? That's what keeps them going. They got to pay for themselves, right? So think like Google, read between the lines, do reality checks, someone tells you something, or you think of something, think it through logically before you tell it to somebody else or implement it, right? Bounce it off somebody else. Just go, all right, I might be crazy here. Hey, trust me. I say that all the time to people, and they go, Ken, you are crazy, but what do you got for us?
Because sometimes a crazy idea is a good idea in the end. It's like 9 crazy ideas are bad, but one of them ends up being like hugely awesome.
Yeah. Well, I've been known to be, like I said, ahead of the curve. So most people don't know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
And so they think it's crazy until it works, right? So, yeah, that's the thing, is getting it to work after you've gotten the okay to do your crazy idea. So make sure.
Yes. That's really great. That's really great. Well, why don't we spend some time, why don't you give us some insight of anything that you're working on, or anything you'd like people to know, or how to get in touch with you?
Okay. I never communicate what I'm working on, because that's the company's business. So I don't do that. Matter of fact, all these SEO awards that they give out, I'm sure, well, okay, that sounds a little egotistical. I might have a chance at some of those, but I'd have to tell them what I was doing. And so I don't apply for them. I don't. I mean, it's my company's business. I gotta, keep it quiet for them. That's why I'm just giving you generalizations here and a disclaimer up front. I'm doing, some of what I talked about, but I didn't give you the specifics. I'm doing some of that, and always looking ahead. I've got 12 brands to deal with. Each one's a little different. So it's not always the same techniques.
I feel like it's really exciting when you're working on multiple brands, especially being in-house instead of an agency. So they're, somewhat maybe in the same realm, but they're still a little bit different. So you have to think through each one differently. I feel like it's a really interesting kind of cognitive exercise to be able to handle that really well, and to be able to manage that well, because there's so much going on when you're dealing with more than one or two kind of main company brands. Do you want to like talk a little bit about how to manage that and how to think through that if you're working on multiple things?
Sure. It really just comes down to the website itself, right?
Yeah.
To do SEO well, you've got to have the right format, the right construction, the right pathways. You got to have that in place. And I had to totally rip apart a couple websites in the beginning because they weren't set up properly. And talking about a tough one to get past upper management, right? But you do. I mean, if it's not set up well to rank well, then you're just not helping yourself, right? I mean, you could do all this work and it's not going to go as far as it should. So you really got to make sure you're set up for success first, and convince others that hey, this be kind, be nice, right? Tell them, great job here, but I'm sure SEO wasn't so popular back then when you built this, blah blah blah. Here's kind of my concept of what I'm thinking to help rank better, right?
Sure.
Yeah, because you have to be set up for success. Otherwise, you'll look bad. You'll look bad if let's say a company doesn't let you work on a website and it never ranks well, but you were responsible for it, right? They could say you're doing a bad job when in fact you didn't touch it. Well, same thing for setting up improperly. If it's set up improperly, you could do all the work in the world and it's not going to get there.
Yeah. I mean, you got to be able to figure out how to influence the people that matter so you can actually make a difference. And like you're saying, if you're not able to actually change the site at all, you might get the blame anyway. But I also think like you got to be able to do part of your job, which is to express to others how important certain things are to do. So even if you can't change it, part of the responsibility lies, because that's part of the role, is to try to help express what needs to be done within the organization. And if you can't change it, sometimes you can't change at the end of the day. But as long as you make a valiant effort to really try and show people the ways of SEO and the impacts and the business impact, like you said, the dollars and cents, I think it's really important. Is there anything else? Any last tips of where people could get in touch with you if they want to find out more about you, Ken?
Yeah, of course, LinkedIn, and I don't remember my URL because I made it very Googleicious. There's a term for it. That's a term that I didn't even say it at first at my company. I feel bad that I didn't think of it, but it's Googleicious, meaning it's optimized. So whatever it is, just look up my name. You'll find me. I'm probably the only SEO named Ken Vitto, I'm guessing.
We'll have it in the show notes. So thanks, Ken. We really appreciate your time. And thank you for joining us today on SEO Unveiled.
Well, thanks a lot, Clay. I really enjoyed this. I really appreciate the chance to pay it forward, just like the other pioneers that paid it forward to me.